Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's cup final day. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today, like last year, Laura, I'm joined by Laura Bradburn. A year ago tomorrow, we were in this studio. We were watching Celtic versus Hearts. You were actually at home.
Yeah.
Lawrence was in the studio, and we basically that day we won a quadruple treble. But it was in the depths of despair. Couldn't get to the game. Lenny was in charge. We were going through a hard time. And I said to you when you came in today that the first subject has to be, first and foremost, Bertie Auld, which is why he's sitting right there. And a lot of the brilliant graphics we've seen over the last few days, the Bertie Auld final basically is green and white. We're going to be remembering Bertie throughout today. I think, it was the 14th of November that Bertie passed away. And here we are on the 19th. Tomorrow would be 1 year since we were last here. And I said to you, the changes that we've gone through in the last year are quite remarkable. The Celtic team is just out. So I'm going to read that out first and foremost. I'm guessing the vast majority of people tuning in will have already seen the Celtic team, which is Joe Hart, Josip Juranovic, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Carl Starfelt, Greg Taylor, Callum McGregor, David Turnbull, Leo Labada, Tom Rogic, Mikey Johnson, and Kyogo Furuhashi. We'll talk about the team. Disappointment for a few of the people who have dropped out. I'm thinking Beaton and probably Ralston. Surprise at Johnston and Kyogo coming in, or is it because that's what Ange does? And incredibly, just three players, Laura, are in that side who started 1 year ago tomorrow against Hearts. And the three players are Greg Taylor, Callum McGregor and David Turnbull. That shows you the transformation that we've experienced over the last year and in particular over the last few months under Ange.
It does. I mean, I think I said the same thing. You mentioned that particular stat to me when we were doing a bit of prep for the game, and it was one of those things where, in some ways we are a demanding fan base, that we ask for signings and we ask for turnover in players and we ask for spending, and although it could always be more than it is, there's evidence there to say there has been a massive overhaul in the squad. There's obviously a different manager. So much about the team this season that's going out is so different to last year, and you have to say for the better as well.
It is quite remarkable when you look at the team from last year. I'm going to run through it because I was quite surprised looking at it this morning, even though we covered it minute by minute that day. It's Hazard, Ayer at right back, Taylor, Julian, Duffy, Brown, McGregor, Christie, Turnbull, Elyounoussi and Edouard. And leading up to today's game, a few times I've said this week, Laura, I'm missing Ryan Christie, but Elyounoussi as well, because we seem so light at the moment because of the injury of Jota. And I even had the audacity to put out the 11 that I would have picked, but I was thinking if Johnson was injured, if Kyogo was injured, and I put Scales out there, and as it tends to do, Twitter went into a wee bit of meltdown at that suggestion. But the suggestion was made simply because I'm looking at the Hibs team, and we all know their star man is deployed down the right-hand side in Boyle. And I just think that even with Johnston in front of Taylor, we're a bit lightweight on that side.
We are a little bit. I mean, anybody who's watched my coverage on Acsom over the last few weeks knows that I have my question marks about Johnston. You want to hope that he's just on the road to recovery from a very long, serious injury, and that he'll get back to the player that he was, prior to that injury. Taylor on the left-hand side as well. I have to say my preference would have been similar to yours, that, I think Scales has done enough to feel disappointed that he's not involved today. I mean, he's on the bench, but, how much involvement can you have in these situations? I think it's probably where the weakness lies, and given that the fact that Hibs' strengths are down the right-hand side and our potential weaknesses are down our left, I'm in no doubt that is the sort of tactic that they'll take and the way that they'll be targeting us. But, we should hopefully have enough quality in the rest of the squad, with all the changes that we've already gone through to make a difference on the rest of the pitch. Hampden's big, wide open spaces, and I think that definitely plays to our strengths more than it does Hibs.
When we look at that team, and yes, it is strong. I'm glad that we've got a natural player playing on the left-hand side in Mikey Johnson, and the fact that Kyogo's came in is massive. there was a few hints over the last few days, you know, would he, won't he? Who's going to make it, who's not? And then people then start saying, well, you know, he wasn't photographed at training. There's no chance Kyogo's going to play. He's done this before with us because he'd done it at Leverkusen at home when McGregor and Kyogo came back in. Is there a risk in doing it, Laura? I mean, I don't want to give any negative vibes at all. Is there a risk in doing it? Because the example I use is 2 League Cup finals ago, 2019, El Yunusi was thrown in and he was like a man down.
Yeah, I mean, you've not got a great track record with jinxing players.
I was touching wood when I said that, by the way.
But Kyogo is one of these players who, you know, you've got to trust the judgment of the backroom staff. You've got to trust the judgment of Ange that they're not going to throw him in when he's not ready. I maybe would trust the judgment of Kyogo himself. He looks desperate to play at every opportunity, but I would hope those around him are you know, only giving him the opportunity to play today if he's got the required fitness and recovery under his belt, because if he has, then undoubtedly we're a better team with him in it, and certainly stronger, especially because as it appears he'll be playing through the middle, which is the position so many of us favour him in.
Yeah, I'm just going to remind everybody, I'm going to bring in as many comments as we possibly can. The viewing figures on A Celtic State of Mind have been tremendous over the last year. And we try and get as many comments involved in the pre-match, the post-match, and every daily bulletin. But I'm just going to mention the man to my left, the legendary figure that is Bertie Auld, and we lost Bertie 5 weeks ago. This beautiful print was given to us by the Penalty Spot, who are sponsoring the Cup final coverage and this week's Acsom bulletins. For our fundraiser for St Mary's, we have announced the final amount is 28k, and what happened? More donations came in. So thanks everybody for that, because we will be presenting, and Laura's seen the big check. We'll be presenting one of those big checks down at St Mary's next week, and we'll capture some reaction from the Canon and we'll share that with all the viewers as well.
I've always wondered, Paul, can you cash a check like that? I've never known if you can cash a big check or if it's like, if there's a giant post box you can put it through.
Well, I'd love to try. No one's ever presented me with a check that big. It's normally the National Lottery ones. Yeah. I don't know. It's a great achievement from everybody who was involved, and obviously we will be doing a video down at St Mary's, and we'll be thanking every single person who contributed and continues to contribute. The links are under the video. If you do want to put some money in the pot, it'll all go to St Mary's. Absolutely, 100%. So when we're looking at some of the comments coming in, Sean F., thank you for joining us on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed on there, get subscribing. We've got some massive shows coming up in 2022 on the channel. Big Acsom developments. The Acsom bulletin will remain as it is, 12:30 every day, because we've got a great community of people and a great team of people, Laura, who contribute to that. But we are going to have much more programming, much more content for your enjoyment. And Sean F says, will Mikey Johnson track back to help Taylor against Boyle? Hopefully McGregor will help in that regard. Well, you know what, Sean? That was the reason I suggested Scales out there. And Scales had played for Shamrock Rovers, left mid, not so much left wing, but, you know, left mid. And I think we've seen his prowess once he hits that byline. We've seen it against Ross County in the first half. Laura, tremendous pass for the opening goal. Mikey Johnson, do you think he does have the defensive qualities required, particularly when Hibs are strong down the right?
The short answer to that is no. I think where Mikey Johnson is going to prove a difference for us is purely in an attacking sense. He's going to be dangerous. He likes to take on a player, likes to take a shot, which a lot of Celtic players don't often like to do. So that is a positive of his game. But I think defensively, you're going to be looking at Taylor having to take the brunt of the defensive duties down that left-hand side. And potentially McGregor having to do a little bit of that as well, just because obviously Turnbull's a more attacking player. We know that when McGregor's playing in midfield, he's kind of box to box as it is, but I think we could see a lot of the responsibility for helping Taylor out in the left-hand side falling to him.
Mm-hmm. You know, the other thing, I think the biggest surprise actually is that Ralston doesn't start. So even though we have a fit left winger in Johnson, we've got a fit striker in Kyogo, and brilliant, superb, that shouldn't really have affected the decision to change the right back. So when you're looking at the fact that Juranovic starts there, if you were to look at the midweek game, Ralston was the match winner. He was the hero. He's been brilliant all season. Is there maybe a fitness issue that we're just unaware of? Because I don't think it's down to form, is it?
Well, it's certainly not down to form. I can only imagine that it's a fitness issue. The other way of looking at it is, of course, we've just got the luxury of having two right backs who either of them starting today would have been an acceptable option. You know, Juranovic starting today is by no means a weakness in the team. I think, like, from a personal point of view, and I think what a lot of Celtic fans feel is, and this is not to do down Juranovic in any way, but, you know, Ralston's a local boy, he's a Celtic produced player. You're always going to want to see him do well, and potentially the fact that he could have been involved in a cup final when he's come back from what he's come back from in terms of his Celtic career looking over this time last year. You know, if you'd have said that we'd have been clamouring for him to be in the starting lineup when we were doing the cup coverage last year, you'd have kind of laughed. But I mean, the season that he's had, the resurgence he's had under Ange, you have to say that, you know, if he had been in the team today, you wouldn't have even, this wouldn't even be a discussion point, to be absolutely honest. That the tables have flipped in that sense, where Ralston being in the team used to be the talking point. Now the fact that he's not in the team is the talking point, and that just says everything that you need to know about what Anthony Ralston's done. And I think to like focus on him a little bit more, he's an absolute like inspiration to any young child, any young person watching football or in life in general. Is if you believe you've got the skill to do something, or even if you've got the work ethic to do it, then being written off as consistently as he has, by myself included, and most of the people on the podcast, as well as the Celtic fan base in general, that should have no bearing on whether you still put the work in and still get yourself back into contention. Anthony Ralston couldn't get a game at St Johnstone when he was on loan there, and now he's one of our favourite players amongst the Celtic support. So I think it's just a testament to him, to his ability to work hard as well, and even if he's not starting today, I would like to see him feature in some capacity.
Well, I'm like yourself, and it may well be, you know, a wee bit of sentimentality, but I was talking during the week, Laura, about how, you know, we had a captain, a marvellous captain in Scott Brown. We now have Callum McGregor, so you're looking at first cup final as a captain for Callum. And you're also looking at, well, you know, for all the hard work, it would have been tremendous to see Tony Ralston on the park. You remember back to the homegrown Kieran Tierney getting his teeth knocked out or his jaw broken, and you know, making those efforts to get back into the stadium to go up, and his face was a wee bit mangled when he went up to get the trophy. And you've got that relationship with players that have come through the ranks. Tony Ralston has been an absolute warrior for Celtic and for Ange Postecoglou, but we do get to that point at times where we're working on limited information. We don't know the fitness issues with various players. We didn't have a clue that Kyogo would be starting today. And there he is starting, and we're all delighted about it. But someone did say after 60 minutes, if we need to, we could always bring on Ralston to score the winner. Well, you know what? I wouldn't put it past them. I'd love to see it, to be honest with you. Now, when we look back, I'm going to run through the last year, but mainly focusing on Ange Postecoglou and some of the the challenges that he has faced and overcome. The way that he has instilled this mentality in a group of players who were short on confidence, Laura, they were short on direction, I think, and the way that he's galvanised the fan base. But before we talk about that fan base galvanisation, there has been an announcement in relation to Higgins not coming to Celtic. We talked about this a couple of weeks back, and we spoke about how if Celtic, and I wouldn't have put this past them, had offered him the job, there would have been some, legalities that had to be dealt with before any statement was made. So Acsom and others demanding a statement. And I started thinking, on the one hand, you've got Celtic who are not great at communicating at the best of times, Laura, but on the other hand, maybe there's something legal that's holding them back. Lo and behold, Higgins himself makes a statement saying that he's not coming to Celtic. And it's been met with universal delight, I would suggest. If you're unhappy with it, please comment in the comment section, but I don't think you will. What a result. What a result to hear that on today of all days.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of you that goes, how much influence did Celtic supporters have in the decision? You would like to think a lot of influence, but regardless of whether we have or haven't, he's not coming, and I think that'll be for the betterment of the Celtic support. I hold my hands up and say, as somebody who wasn't totally invested in the whole debate that was going on, I was kind of, not really aware until I started doing research into exactly why he would be a bad influence for the club. That came to a head for me when I was at the Celtic Aberdeen match a few weeks ago, and there was the I was going to say controversy suggests there's a discussion to be had around it. The disgrace that was Celtic supporters being moved on from providing a place for food banks for the less well off in our community and the people who are needy at a time of year when it's most appreciated. For anybody who continued to be slightly ignorant about the situation going on between the policing of Celtic supporters and what we try to do as Celtic supporters, myself included, any ignorance that you had towards that situation was totally blown out the water by seeing something like that. And that, for me, was the sign that, whatever voice any of us have to be able to influence these decisions, we have to use. People should be free to enjoy their football club in the way that they want to enjoy it, as long as it's not harming other people. And I think that is all as Celtic supporters that we ask for, and Bernard Higgins not being a part of the football club will maintain the fact that as much as possible we're able to do that going forward.
Well, the best thing that I take from this was the coming together of like-minded fans who obviously signed the open letter to Michael Nicholson, CEO, who failed to respond to it. But we were trying to be as balanced as we possibly could, Laura, and say, well, is there something holding them back from a response on this occasion? Because we all know that they're notoriously bad at engagement at this moment in time, and hopefully that will improve. But you've got to take your hat off, or tip your hat to the people behind pulling it all together, pulling together the community of Celtic groups, associations, affiliations, podcasts, Celtic supporters clubs and others who signed the letter. And obviously the protests were organised, silent protests were organised, tennis balls were thrown on the park. It's worked. Simple as that. I mean, there's no way I'm going to believe for a moment that this was not in the pipeline, Laura. It's been deliberately leaked to Celtic fans by someone at the club who knew it was a bad idea. And I mean, don't ask me to prove that, because I can't. Is it a theory? Yes, it is a theory. It's my opinion. How else would we have known that this was in the pipeline? And I've thought better of it. And thankfully, it's not going to be happening. So, power to the people, as John Lennon once said.
I think the other thing I would want to say as well is that, I'm on the side of some of the people that I've heard. I think Jim Orr mentioned the same on the bulletin that I missed on Friday. But, I'm all for protest and using our voices. But I think the good thing about this decision being made and being out of the way is we can now get back to the matches being about the football and being about supporting the team, because regardless of the noble intent behind some of the protests that have gone on with the tennis balls, with the silence, there's no doubt that had a direct impact on the team, and sometimes not for the better. I'm all for protests out with the ground outside of the 90 minutes, but when the team is on the pitch and when they're playing for the green and white, you've got to support them. And I just think that as much as this decision is a positive for the club going forward, it's a positive for the right now, because the fans can get back to doing what they do best, and that's supporting the team.
100%. And I think today the timing was perfect, Laura, so we can focus on the game. We, over the last 18 months or so on the live streams, have been building a fantastic community of Celtic fans who tune in on a daily basis. Not everybody can do that. Laura, it's 12:30. We set up the bulletin at 12:30 because we were all in lockdown at the time, but we're going to continue that. But what we're also going to be doing over the next weeks and months is providing evening content, and not in the way that you're looking at just now. It's not going to be dial-in content. It's going to be studio-based, live and fully produced. So looking forward to all of that moving into the new year. Justin Studley is watching live in Australia. Just saw the team. Reckon Ange has a plan. Love you guys. Thank you very much, Justin, because we do appreciate all the support. We received a Christmas card from one of our listeners. I'm going to show it at half-time, Laura. I'm not sure if the person would like me to identify them, but they are a regular commenter and viewer of the show. But that just shows you that people do appreciate it, and we appreciate people tuning in. We love talking about Celtic. We love the debate. Sometimes we get it wrong. We're not sitting here saying we're always right. Sometimes we get it wrong. I mean, so many of the Acsom contributors got it wrong with Tony Ralston, for example, and loads of other Celtic fans did as well. But I think you said it perfectly well. We're now talking about him because he's not in the team. And that is the complete turnaround in Tony Ralston's career. For anyone who's not seen the Hibs team, we have Macy, McGinn, Porteous, Hanlon, Stevenson, Doyle Hayes, Newell, Boyle, Campbell, Murphy, Nisbet. There are some obvious names in there, Boyle, Nisbet, for example. I quite like Joe Newell as well. I think he's a handy player. He seems to play pretty well against us every time he comes up against us, so I'd be keeping an eye on him as well. Hibs, of course, are in a bit of disarray themselves, Laura.
Yeah, they are. I was on Sports Sound the other night, and while I was waiting to go on and just talk a little bit with one of the Hibs podcasters about the game going forward today, they played a little bit of a segment of an interview with Martin Boyle where he was asked about Jack Ross's departure and how it's affected the team, and he was quite outspoken about it. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was along the lines of that, it was perhaps a bit of a premature sacking, and the fact that, certainly Martin Boyle, speaking for himself, felt that Jack Ross should be with them today at the cup final. And I think we were talking about it before we came on air, and kind of agreed that, if he's saying that, he's not saying that off his own back. He's saying that because it's potentially a kind of wider held view amongst the team and the squad. So from a Celtic point of view, that puts you in two places. Is it going to affect the team in a positive way? Are they going to go out and prove that they can win the trophy for their former manager? Or is there a divide in the dressing room that's been caused by this sacking that's going to mean that there are kind of pro-Jack Ross players and anti-Jack Ross players, and is that going to cause a divide that we can take an advantage of? It's hard to know exactly what the outcome of that's going to be, but it was just something interesting that suggested, all is not harmonious in Edinburgh at the moment.
When you were telling me about it, I hadn't heard that conversation, but when you told me about it, I thought, well, it would be a bold move if he's the only one thinking that.
Yeah.
In the dressing room. I am 100% focused on Celtic, but obviously part of that is you keep an eye on the goings on in and around Scottish football. I thought it was premature. I really did. And, I actually think it was premature when he was sacked by Sunderland as well. He'd done pretty well there, and I thought that move probably came too early in his managerial career, but he couldn't turn it down. The move to Hibs probably would have came better at that time for him, and then maybe looking down to England if he did well. So yes, that leaves a team either in disarray, or it gives them this bounce and momentum to prove either maybe the board's wrong or maybe the incoming manager that they should be part of their plans. Either way, we're talking about Justin tuning in from Australia. There is, regardless of who wins, there's going to be some happy international Australian internationals after today's game, because we've got Tommy Roderick involved, of course. You've got Martin Boyle, but Ange himself was capped at that level. When we look at their run to the final, they've had a fairly decent run. Kilmarnock, Dundee United and Rangers, of course. We look at the main players being Boyle and Nisbet. Now, I'm going to bring that into the discussion. Following the Ross County game, there was the incident involving Starfelt. You've not had a chance to talk about it because you weren't on Friday. I felt, looking at the game, Starfelt has been very, very comfortable since he's come back in from injury. Malky Mackay brought on Jordan White for Ross County, and he definitely targeted Starfelt. I've seen teams doing it this season with Juranovic. I don't know if they rate him in the air. I'm not sure, but they've played a couple of teams have actually targeted. Hart's targeted him as well, gone straight for Juranovic for aerial duels. So maybe looking at the stats, Alan Morrison could tell us if he's good at that. But they targeted Starfelt. It resulted in Starfelt getting a broken nose and a booking, and obviously that was one of the discussions. Do you think Hibs are looking at that and thinking we'll do the same?
Listen, Motherwell's another team who were very physical with us. I think it's definitely something that, for better or worse, teams are being told to go out and be physical against us. And to be honest, I'm not really sure why, because I don't see us as a particularly physically weak team. Perhaps they mean that being physical with us will break up the play that we're trying to put together and the passing moves that we're trying to put together. In relation to the Ross County match the other night, I mean, there's so much about that match that you could talk about, but the Starfelt thing, I'm a bit divided about. I mean, he's obviously got plenty to complain about if he's ended up with a broken nose. However, there's a bit of you that thinks, listen, if the referee's not going to listen to you, as he didn't in that case, you just kind of have to go on with things. And he possibly talked himself into a booking, which later led on to the sending off. But it's amazing, like, how different managers and different players see the game. I mean, I tweeted the other night about Malky Mackay was on the radio after the game suggesting that the referee had played the game basically waiting until we scored, and you're just kind of sitting going, how can you have that opinion of the way the referee played when you'd already been given the advantage by having a player sent off?
Yeah.
There are such things in football as things that go for you and things that go against you. Both teams played the exact same amount of time. One team managed to score one more goal than the other. There should be nothing more to it than that. So it's surprised me, and I think there is a lot of hostility towards the Celtic team in a more than competitive sense, and I think certainly Hibs will be looking to capitalise on that as much as any of the other teams have. One that springs to mind particularly is Ryan Porteous. You know, we know he's not a stranger to flying into a challenge or to a red card. What you would hope is that he's maybe a bit less sensible than he should be about these things, and perhaps we can end up with an advantage off the back of that. But I mean, this is all speculation. We just have to, at the end of the day, follow as what Ange says and not worry about the neighbours over the fence, and just do exactly what we do and do it well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you look at Porteous, I mean, one of the incidents that's in the wee Acsom Black Book, Laura, was Porteous against Callum McGregor's shin.
Yeah.
Monty comes in to suggest that perhaps Anthony has a slight knock. And Sean F. also says that Ange said it post-match against Ross County. I didn't see that because we were on celebrating almost after that. And John McLaughlin also comes in and says, Ange said Ralston was carrying a knock. It's no wonder he puts his body on the line every time he plays for Celtic, Laura. And that's part of the reason that I think that you look at the attitude, the mental strength of somebody like Tony Ralston. I mean, I'm going to go on about this a wee bit before we go into other points. You imagine going to your work every single day and being motivated to work to that level and prepare yourself just in case you get a game on a Saturday. But for one occasion in 18 months, you were able to do your job. I mean, to be able to motivate yourself and keep yourself composed, I think is incredible for Tony Ralston.
It absolutely is. He's been a testament to himself and to the staff and everything at the club who've managed to keep him on the right track, so that when that opportunity came up for him to get back into the team, he's been able to grasp it with both hands. To go back to what I was saying before, I think the reason that we're maybe a little bit more sentimental about him and a little bit more sort of, willing him to do well is that this whole Brickie moniker is a bit of a laugh, but the reason that it's come about is because he is the guy round the corner, he is the guy down the street, he's the average Celtic supporter who, like Tommy Burns says, got lucky. He's wearing the Celtic shirt, and you get the impression that Celtic is everything to him that it is to all of us. I don't blame the players. How could Kyogo come over from Japan and feel like Celtic is any more to him than any other club he could have signed for? Same with Rogic, same with Starfelt, same with Carter Vickers. You want them to play as well as they can when they're in a Celtic shirt, but ultimately it is a team paying their wages, and that is what Celtic is to them. You know for a fact that to Tony Ralston, to Callum McGregor, to James Forrest, it is more than that. And you're happy to see somebody like Ralston take that opportunity, run with it. If he achieves nothing else in his Celtic career, he'll have a few good years to look back on at this point and say, I played for Celtic, I played well, and I'm fondly remembered for it.
You know this, Laura, in the modern game, people put so much onus, and I understand why, on the science, and we criticise Strachan and his laptop and all the rest of it, but we realise that there is a part to be played for data analysis, the science. I've got huge respect for guys like Alan Morrison, who talk about the game in a completely different realm to myself, and I call myself an observer. Whatever I see, I take a note and I make the point. People can agree or disagree, and that's what sparks the debate. Alan and others give you a completely different view of certain things. But what we're talking about here is the attitude and application of a player in Tony Ralston. And I remember, here's the name dropping Clarkson coming in here, Laura, speaking to another player who played with Hibs and Celtic, Pat Stanton. And he said that no matter how much the game changes, when you've got the homegrown players in the dressing room, and some of the players he was talking about, even though he never came through the ranks, was Johnny Doyle, for example, Celtic through and through, Tommy Burns. He says they guys will always give you that wee bit more, no matter what. Whereas in the modern day, there may be mercenary players, there may be players using Celtic as a platform. We've seen it last season. If ever you were to see it, certain players not being on it, and then they leave the club and all of a sudden they're transformed. So I always think that Celtic, particularly, because I'm an old romantic when it comes to that, does have to have a nucleus of homegrown players. And we do have it. We've got it here. You know, Tony asked the question of Ange a couple of weeks back about the youth. And you look at the team that we regularly play with Tony Ralston playing at right back. So he's come through the ranks. James Forrest, Callum McGregor. You've got Mikey Johnson. You've got Montgomery. You've got Welsh. And then on the fringes, you've got players like Henderson. So we do have half a dozen players who know this club inside out. And I do think it's important. And people might say, well, that's old-fashioned. I really do, because it's your identity, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, we're coming awful close to saying they know the city, and that's not something you want to do lightly. But, you know, it's don't get me wrong, some of the biggest heroes that I have in a Celtic shirt come from far and wide, Henrik Larsson being number one. He is a Celtic hero only by dint of, you know, Wim Jansen arriving at the club and happening to know that there was this struggling Swedish striker at Feyenoord who wanted an out, and he gave him it, and that process gave us one of the best players we've ever seen in a Celtic shirt. So as the moniker says, it's a club open to all, but you do get something a little bit extra, not necessarily a little bit extra in terms of ability or in terms of you know, what a player can bring to a team, but their performance level can sometimes be elevated beyond their ability, much more so than a player who's coming in from the outside could do. You know, Tom Rogic will give you his best as much as he can do. Is he always given totally 100%? Sometimes you might say no. I don't think you can ask that question of McGregor, of Ralston, of Forrest, that every time they step out in a Celtic shirt, they are absolutely playing for the club that they know and that they love. I mean, I've gone down a rabbit hole here in terms of, you know, I just want to praise those players and the homegrown players, but there are so many heroes that come from far and wide for Celtic that I absolutely love as well, and there's a place for all of them in the team.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to say they're playing for a people in a cause there. I thought that's what was coming. I want to focus on certain aspects of Ange Postecoglou since he arrived at Celtic. The first thing I would like to say is we, through Tony Haggerty, we're talking about the rip-roaring, free-scoring, never-boring Glasgow Celtic. There was this term which people have grown to dislike, Ange ball, and it was all about entertaining football. He said himself at the opening press conference that he gave to fan media that it was all about entertaining football. He spoke about his dad's disdain for boring Italian defensive style football, and obviously we know all about the Catenaccio, and it was Celtic, and this man to my left was part of that who smashed it. And that was music to so many Celtic fans' ears. You know, the Celtic way. What is the Celtic way? I don't just mean that pathway up to our home turf. The Celtic way, it's a culture, it's a style, and that's what he kind of sold us when he came in, and you think that's brilliant. But my big concern was the amount of gaffers who had come in and spoke about a style and a philosophy, and it didn't quite come to fruition. You know, Tony Mowbray spoke about it, you know, football utopia. John Barnes spoke about it, Laura. Liam Brady spoke about it, and you know, he spoke about a style and a culture of football. But Ange hasn't just spoken about it; he's implemented it. But one thing I've been really impressed with, and probably the last game against Hibs when we beat them 3-1, we've seen both sides of Ange Postecoglou's Celtic. We've got the entertaining side. And we've seen games like the 6-0 drubbins of Dundee and St Mirren, the 3-1 first half anyway against Hibs at Easter Road, Dundee United 3-0, absolutely superb on the charity weekender the other week. That is the free-flowing football that Ange promised us. We've seen the other side though. Ross County the other night 2-1, St Johnstone in the semi-final this tournament 1-0, Motherwell 1-0, Hearts 1-0, Aberdeen 2-1 on 2 occasions. We've seen both sides of Ange Postecoglou, yet people say he can't adapt.
Well, listen, all I would say to that is I've read his book, but what I would implore anybody to do is look out any of the interviews that Ange Postecoglou has done with Australian media since becoming Celtic manager. He did one with Shane Warne, the ex-cricket player, not that long ago, just within the last couple of weeks, I think. And all I can say is the phrase "match made in heaven" was made for Ange Postecoglou and Celtic. He knows what kind of a club he's playing for, what they expect. And it's a marriage that's entirely meant for the style of football that he plays. He wants to entertain. Not only that, he wants to entertain a fan base who want to be entertained. Mm-hmm. And I think that he is able to bring that. It's not lost on him that we want to win and that it's expected that we win. But he wants to make sure that we enjoy the way in which we do it. Because, you know, we've had other managers in the past who have proved successful. Have they provided us with the best football we've ever seen? Possibly not. Ronnie Dyla, who's had a bit of success at New York City FC, was successful for us as well. Some people might not look back on the style of football that he played as fondly. But ultimately, there has to be that marriage, and I think Ange gets that and is delivering it, like you say. I mean, I had a season ticket for around a decade and was... in some ways, unfortunately, a season ticket holder for the season that Tony Mowbray was in charge. Regardless of what you say, you have to put on the pitch what you're trying to because, you know, people will see through the language that you use in interviews and all that. If they watch your team and they perform as in dire a manner as some of the Tony Mowbray teams did. Ange is a man who delivers what he says he's going to deliver, and so far he's done that with abundance. Have there been a few shaky performances along the way? Absolutely. Have there been due criticisms that have come his way? Absolutely. I remember one 4-0 defeat that we had earlier in the season. I can't remember who to, but you know, I had plenty to criticise there. The fact of the matter is, he takes the criticism. He continues to believe in what he's trying to achieve because he knows it will bring his success, and he's doing that. Mm-hmm. The unshakability of what he's doing is actually a strength, I find. You know, so many people have gone on about he has to adapt, he has to change, he has to suit Scottish football. If he believes in what he's doing and it's working, I don't think he needs to adapt. I think he needs to make people adapt to what he's doing, and he's certainly doing that.
Yeah, and we can see it. We can see it in the performances, the results. I mean, a lot of these games I mentioned there where we've dug in and got a result. You know, last season we were not getting those results. We look back to the great Tommy Burns side. We drew too many games, Laura. Great to watch, but we drew far too many games. What I would also like to point out is the resurrection of the careers at Celtic under Ange Postecoglou. We've spoken about Tony Ralston. He's an obvious one. On the bench today, and I'm going to bring up the DJ of choice who's watching on YouTube. I'm happy to see Juranovic in a preferred position. The team looks strong. Only thing that looks weak is the bench. And it has kind of looked weak most of the season. But on that bench is Nir Bitton, who I think has been reborn under Ange Postecoglou. I would also suggest Tommy Rogic's an obvious one. I mean, he's having potentially the season of his Celtic career. And Joe Hart. I mean, let's not forget Joe Hart's career has been resurrected under Ange Postecoglou. So I think when you look at that, it's not luck, Laura. This must come down to his man management ability.
It absolutely does. You know, I've seen it more than once. I remember a specific game where Joe Hart ran up to Ange to say he was going to change the process of the way he was playing. He wasn't playing it out from the back anymore. He was going to go route one. And, you know, some people saw that and kind of thought, I don't know what that says about their relationship. I think if you've got a player who's comfortable enough to run 50 yards to speak to the manager and say, I want to do this, what do you think? There's an element of respect there. Not only does he feel able to approach him to put his idea across, but they actually felt that he respected him enough to go and do it rather than just to do what he wanted to do out in the pitch. We see so many players take it upon themselves to do things because they don't respect the person standing on the sidelines. And I think what Ange has done with Joe Hart and with some of the other players is he's given them belief back in their own abilities, and he's proved to them why he wants them to be part of his team. That is what a manager is there to do. You know, so often last season with Neil Lennon, I remember, you know, being apoplectic at the fact that he would just sit with his feet up sometimes on the sidelines when things weren't going to plan. And although I think Neil Lennon has certainly, you know, expressed his own regret at some of the things that happened, you know, I'm much more comfortable with what I'm seeing from Ange this season, that he is motivating players, that he knows how to change things if things aren't going well, and I hope he can prove that again today. I realise I'm getting to the point where I'm just rambling and saying things because I'm just absolutely hyped for this game. I just kind of want to just go Mon Celtic, and that's about it.
Well, you've only got 5 minutes to wait. Wee Jimmy comes in. Surprised Paul John isn't at the cup final, if I'm honest. These are special days in the life of a Celtic fan, 100%. And let me tell you, I would love to be at the game. However, we have a commitment at Acsom to cover every single match, Laura. I woke up this morning with another offer of a ticket. Now, had I taken that, you'd have been sitting here just answering the comments yourself, and that wouldn't have been fair. So there is a dilemma, you know, kind of brewing. Yeah, I've got a season ticket, Laura, but you know, I hope the club didn't give me any trouble for this. But my brother's using it this season until such times as we can do the broadcast and go to the games. There's a difficulty in around the broadcast deal, which means we can't broadcast from the stadium, even if we're not looking at the pitch. There's other people doing broadcasts after the game, and that's their thing, and we're not going to encroach on that and try and match it. So at the moment, the match day bulletin works, but you are working hard to have a rota system, Laura, that allows me to go to more games than I am currently at the moment. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for the comment as well. Anyone who is lucky enough to be at the game, and I think the vast majority of the Acsom team are there, Laura. Enjoy it. Enjoy the game. Because I was asked the other day about the concerns around being there. We're all at that stage again where we're just expecting things to happen around the pandemic again. There's a huge fear. There's a big concern. You know, day-to-day life, Laura. We don't want to go back to that. But people were asking themselves, should I be going to the game? So there are people who haven't gone, and that was the reason this morning why I was offered another ticket. People are worried about going to the game at the moment. That kind of thing, though, to say you can go, but it's kind of on you, I feel it's a wee bit unfair on the fans. I wouldn't want for a moment there not to be a capacity crowd at Hampden, don't get me wrong, but I just felt it was a wee bit of a cop-out. They're kind of saying, you know, this is all going to explode in the next couple of weeks, but aye, bash on if you want to stand in a stadium with 50,000 others.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think as long as people are taking all the precautions that they can take, and that involves every announcement that we've seen about washing your hands, wearing your mask, getting your vaccinations, all that kind of stuff. You know, some people are saying that's a controversial stance to take. It really isn't if you listen to the people who know what they're talking about. As long as you're taking those precautions, if there's a Celtic match on, Celtic supporters are going to go to that match. And that is what's going to happen today. You're not going to see, I think you're going to see instances of hearing people, individuals who have said, I don't feel safe to go to the match, and are well within their rights to then offer that ticket to somebody else. But you can bet your bottom dollar they will find somebody to take that ticket. There are going to be as many supporters at that match as Celtic can manage to fit in there. Maybe not the case for Hibs, as we've seen, but you know, like you say, the only way in which there was going to be a less than capacity crowd at Hampden today was going to be if somebody called off the match. If the match is going ahead, you can bet your bottom dollar there's going to be Celtic fans there, and hopefully they're all sensible about it, as I'm sure they will be. Take all the precautions, and that's all you can ask of people at this stage. You know, we've had nearly 2 years of restrictions on our way of life and all that kind of thing. People have done as they've been asked to do, and I think they're continuing to do that. But if the game is on, people are going to be there.
Absolutely. And we're sitting here, we're going to watch the game and we're going to come back at halftime and full time to discuss that. We know we were way up at 1,000 live viewers here. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the comment section. And a Celtic State of Mind is growing. We're growing on all the channels. But I realise instantly when the game's about to kick off, because a few of you drop off because you want to get involved in the action at Hampden Park, and the teams are just coming onto the park, Laura. So I think what we'll do at this stage is we'll go and watch that, and we will come back at half-time. I want a prediction from you before we do that.
All positive. I'm going 3-0 Celtic. We're going to blow them away.
Love it. And by the way, I hope you're right. One last word. Paddy Lavery, welcome back, sir. Laura, love your jumper.
Thank you.
Another last word. Sean F. The Rebels have won. Yeah. The game is over. The Rebels have won. Let's go and join the action. Laura Bradburn, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.